So be respectful of muting yourselves and taking yourself off mute and allow people to talk. Aaron is our producer today, and if you want to raise your hand and you have something to say, Aaron will be on the lookout for that. Okay, so now that's out of the way. My name is Alex Drop. My pronouns are they, them, and theirs. I am Latinx. I am happily married for 10 years. My anniversary was just a couple of weeks ago. I work for the global markets and banking area of Bank of America. I've been in my business for 25 years and at my bank for 14, and I happen to be transgender. Now, I created this course last year because I was in the process of coming out as transgender, and I had no role models to look up to. There was no one in my company, and the only other professional trans man I knew was Sam Slate, who's on our panel today, who I met at Out and Equal a couple of years ago. Now, if you go on to Instagram, you'll see that there's tons of 20-something trans men all with their shirts off, but that's not really my demographic I was looking to connect with. I was trying to connect with someone in the business world who has a successful career or someone who's in the process of climbing the ladder. I was growing frustrated and I spoke to my therapist about it, who also happens to be trans, but he doesn't count as a professional in my world. I told him that there is no trans men in banking at all, and there's none that I can see in any line of business. And he laughed at me and he assured me there are, and they're just living stealth. You may ask yourself, well, what's stealth? What's that? We're going to cover that later, and I do have some definitions on the slide, if we flip to that slide, for you to understand. But that's enough about me now. So let's just go to our panel. We have a great group of guys on the panel to talk to you. So let's start off with Ethan. If you don't mind taking yourself off mute and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey family, how are you? I'm Ethan Alexander. I am the Worldwide Policy Co-Director of Microsoft's ERG Glean. I've been with Microsoft for almost 10 years, and I am a Black man of the trans experience.
Excellent. Thank you. Sam, you want to jump in?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be. My name is Sam Slate. I work for Dell. I am one of the founding members of our trans task force. I am a dad, a veteran, a bit of a geek in multiple ways. And I'm this 40-something trans man who really leans into using my visibility to hopefully make change for our community.
Excellent, thank you. Chris, you want to tell us about yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Chris. My pronouns are he, him, his. And I am a senior food technologist for Mondelez International. If you're not familiar with the name Mondelez, I'm sure you'd be familiar with our brands. I work in the global biscuit products platform, and we reformulate ingredients such as Oreo cookies, Chips Ahoy, Belvita, Ritz crackers. So we have a really broad portfolio, and it's a wonderful company to be with. I've also been the co-lead for the Rainbow Council, which is the LGBTQ+ ERG for North America. And I've had this position since 2019, although I had come out with the company as transgender in 2017. So it's been a really amazing journey, and I'm really honored to be here to help tell a little bit of that story to y'all.
Thanks, Chris. I happened to meet Chris last year at Out and Equal, and we found out we lived near each other, so we got to socialize a little bit. Victor, would you like to tell us?
Hi, everyone. My name is Victor. I use he, him, his pronouns. I'm a Vice President Operational Risk Lead for the Americas region for Client Operational Services under Bank of America. I work with Alex and Trisha in their Gender Expansive Working Group at the bank. And it's such an honor to be here with you all. Thanks.
Excellent. So let's talk a little bit about transitioning. And I just want you all to know, please understand that there's no one way or right way to transition. It takes on many different forms. So for example, there's a social transition where the use of pronouns, your name, your address, and how you present yourself. There's the legal transition where you change your name legally. And then there's the medical where you're using HRT or surgery. And kind of like me with my voice is going up and down. I sound like a 14-year-old boy. That's because I am at the moment. But so my first question to the panel is, who on the panel decided to transition or to come out while in their current position? Or did you decide to do it between jobs? Who would like to take that one first?
Hey, Alex, I don't mind taking that.
Okay.
I actually transitioned within Microsoft. Literally, I've been with Microsoft 9.5 years, almost 10 years. I transitioned 8.5 years ago. And I decided not to leave the company while doing it. Initially, during my transition, this was different for everyone, including the people that I was working for. But I decided to go ahead and do it and stay within the company. So for me, working for a company like Microsoft, I'm grateful and I'm honored because they are one of few companies, as a few of the guys on this call know, that actually will allow you to fully bring yourself to work with you.
Excellent. Who's up next? Who would like to tell their story?
Hi, Alex, this is Chris. I can also tell a little bit about my coming out story at work. Also, similarly, I came out in 2017 in the same position I'm in currently. So I actually stayed with the company. I think it was new for me, and it was new for all the people I had spoken with, including my team. And there was a lot of this terminology, even the slide you have up right now, there was a lot of just going through what basic terms mean and just trying to be respectful as possible. But I feel like Mondelez overall has shown that it is truly a great place to work, and they've been working with me all the way to make sure that we understand a little bit more about gender expression and gender fluidity, and are able to really bring that education into the workplace.
Fantastic. Sam?
Yeah, I started my transition in June of 2016, and it was about 6 months after I had gone back to Dell. So I'm a boomerang, which is an internal euphemism at Dell for someone who works at Dell and then leaves and comes back. So I had been with Dell 4 years, left 4 years, came back, and I sat down with my leader. Started my transition, just me and my doctor, in July, and I sat down with my leader in January, and I said, so, I have something I need to share with you. I'm trans. And he's like, well, this is fantastic. And that was not the experience that I thought I would get. I was nervous. My leader then was groovy. Like, he was a really groovy guy, and I knew that he would be cool with it, but I didn't expect that immediate excitement. Like, he was so excited for me. And that was such a gift and a blessing to have that very first reaction be so not just affirming, but excited, like, and expressive. It set the tone for every other experience after that. I had to go meet with our HR business partner and said, I sat down with our HR business partner and said, so I'm transitioning. And he was like, oh God. He's like, where are you going? I'm transgender. He was like, oh, that's great. I thought you were leaving the company. I thought you were transitioning to a new job. And so it was again, that affirming thing. Like, being transgender was not a big deal. Leaving the company, like losing this perception that we would lose your talent, was a big deal. And I thought, wow, I knew of Dell's policy before I started these conversations. What I didn't have an understanding for was what the culture would really support, right? So we have policy, but then there's the lived experience, and those two things can be really overlapping, or they can be very disparate. And I was really fortunate to have a really overlapping experience. And since then, that Dell's a fairly decently sized company, right? We're over 150,000 people globally. So while we had this process in place, we had a transition toolkit, I didn't know another trans person at Dell. And I found the experience of transitioning very supported, but also very isolated and very lonely. And I was really fortunate for all of the cis people that stood with me in that transition. And I have to say that my first Out and Equal Summit was my first experience to really immerse myself in a group of trans folk. And Dell was the reason that I got that experience. Like, Dell brought me to Out and Equal, my first Out and Equal. It's where I met Alex. It's where I met Chris last year. And I've seen names go by of folks that I've met over the past 2 years, and that's because my company supports this work. Like, that's why I get to have this experience, and that's why it's important to me to bring that experience, inside my company and outside my company in forums like this to surface that experience and hope that we can figure out ways to make sure more people get this experience, right? Not just less. It should be, I want everyone to have that type of affirming experience. I want everyone to feel that supported, and I want companies to know how to go about doing that.
Excellent. Now, I don't know if everyone was on the opening meeting on Monday, but Victor got to tell his story and how he came out at work and his transition. Did you want to add anything to that, to this group, or?
So I ended up coming out both at my previous firm and my current firm. At my previous firm, I had a very stark visual change. I used to have hair like down to my belly button and dress very effeminate. So I think they realized that something was up. And then when I finally came out to them, it probably wasn't a surprise at that point. But when I socially transitioned, no one recognized me. Like, that was how stark of a contrast it was. But my previous firm ended up being supportive. And then when I came here, when I interviewed for Bank of America, I was actually still too shy to come out in my initial interviews, including with my hiring manager. And then midway through, when I was like, okay, I love the role, I love the team, I think they like me too. If they don't accept my whole self, this isn't the right team for me. So once I came out, I had to end up coming out to like my initial interviewers after they offered me the position. So that was an interesting but the bank was more than supportive. Like, support, it was probably an understatement for what Bank of America provided.
It's great to hear. Great to hear. Okay, so as I mentioned, I've been looking for a role model. This was probably the most important reasons why I created this. It was more important for me to prove to myself that you can be successful and be out as trans, right? And still have a career. So I have a two-part question for the panel. Did you have a role model to look to as you were transitioning, or did you have assistance from your company to pave the way for you to transition? Let's start with Chris. Do you want to start first?
Sure, I would love to. Yes. So Alex, I think that two of the people on this call today are very much my role models, and you're one of them, and Sam as well. You're the two people that I had met my first time attending Out and Equal as a participant, as a workshop participant. I like just believe that Out and Equal last year really did change the course of my life by showing me that transgender people can have a successful career, can have aspirations, can have this regular life without this label always hanging over you. Because like if you look into the media, there's no short like answer for people who want to discriminate against folks for being transgender. So just not relying on that stigma, and really just kind of being out there and knowing that each individual person has their own unique journey, and being able to look up to people who are like changing the world in such powerful ways. And I think that you're the type of person that when you see something and you see that a gap is there, and like where most people would be like, hey, like we got to wait for someone to be doing this, you kind of just take the bull by the horns and kind of move forward and do that. And it's something I really look up to, and it's really just nice to have have people out there and have other transgender individuals like who are making like such positive changes. So thank you for being there, and also Sam.
Thank you. Thank you. Ethan, you want to jump in?
Sure. To be completely transparent with you, when I transitioned within Microsoft, it wasn't anybody that I could look up to as far as doing that. Initially, growing up in the household that I grew up in, that wasn't even a conversation that you could have. I mean, I didn't even know what the term trans was growing up at all. In my house, I had a dad who was like, work for yourself, save 10% of your money. I have a mom who was like, go to school, get good grades, get a good job. And then it was me, who I always felt like something was off. But when you don't have the knowledge to know exactly what that is, it's kind of hard to pinpoint what it was. So working with Microsoft after I did my transition, I started in Microsoft in 2011 and I transitioned in 2012. And the team that I worked on was so like, yeah, that's right, do it, do it, do it. You know, they had my back times 100. And I would never forget, we got a new manager because initially I started off in the retail side of Microsoft. So we got a new manager, and the new manager put the entire team, probably like 50 people in a circle. And she said, all right, we're going to go around in a circle, and I want everyone to tell me something about themselves that I don't know. So, of course, here I am. At the time, the name I went by was TJ. So here I am in the circle, and everybody in the circle knew, but this new manager, they could tell, oh man, I don't think she's gonna be ready what he's about to say, you know? So I say, hey, I'm transitioning from a female to a male. And I was like, yeah, and I was like, yes, there it was. Because I think for me, at that moment, it was one of those things where first, the family that I have has always been supportive when it came to a lot of things. Initially, you know, it was, I'm a lesbian, I'm a stud, you know, and it's like, what the hell? Like, that really probably was never the case. It was just, you try to find an identity that you can identify with, right? And then you go from there, and then one day you're just like, you know what? When people say she, it pisses me off so bad, to the point where my mom would say, if you feel like that, you should go talk to somebody. And I'm like, well, maybe I need to go talk to somebody. So when I finally decided to do it, I didn't take a poll. So in me not taking a poll, me just telling everybody what I was doing, my siblings was like, yeah, you know, he's going to be the one to piss everybody off, right? So, and I'm the oldest, but then at work, it was one of those things where there were no role models outside of work. For me, I never looked at it like that, and I didn't know anything about it, so there were no role models. But the more that I literally came into my own, and I never cared about what people thought, I met some really dope people within Microsoft, like Sarah Fernando, and she's no longer with Microsoft, and now she's doing some other dope things. And then I met Clark Lai, and then I met Sophia, and I met all of these dope individuals that have always advocated for our community, and it's always stood up and was visible. So as far as the role models, no, there wasn't a role model, but more than anything, I had to look in the mirror and I had to be my own role model, and I had to learn what that looked like from my perspective. Because, you know, being us, there isn't anyone that sits us, it's not the dad that sits us on their lap and is like, let me teach you how to be a man. So I learned how to be a man by seeing what not to do, you know, and that's why I am who I am.
That's such a great point. I mean, I grew up with without a male figure in my life, but I knew how to be a man from the get-go. It was just instinct that came out of me. So, all right, Sam, role model
At work? No,
at work?
no. Until I came to Out and Equal, which was my first Out and Equal was in October of 2018. So I went all of 2017, and then the first 10 months of 2018. for being in a room with other trans male or transmasculine identified folks in a work environment or work setting. I met other trans men and transmasculine folks in other queer spaces, but not at work, and no role models there. I will say from a role model and life model perspective, I am extremely fortunate to have had a grandfather and a father who were incredible role models for me. And while my grandfather especially didn't see me as male or as his grandson, they were both OG feminists. And I mean that like in a really respectful way. They did not, in my family growing up, they didn't really, my dad and grandfather especially didn't gender work. It was work. So like washing the dishes or helping with dinner or cleaning the house or hoeing the garden or plant the garden or harvesting or mowing the lawn or fixing the lawnmower, that was all just work, and we all shared in it. So I had this model of community and shared responsibility and how we exist in the world that was really kind of counterintuitive, because I grew up in the sticks. I grew up in Appalachia, like small town corner of Virginia. And so I didn't, I think what I lacked in role models at work, I feel really fortunate to have had as role models in my family life, and to set me up with a point of view that even when I was perceived as female, I was not less than. So from my family unit, I never got tagged with you're less than because you're female. And that really, really helped me make my way through the world. But y'all, it took, I was 43 when I transitioned, right? So I spent a lot of years moving through the world being perceived as female and female identified, or at least tangentially female identified, because I didn't have words for it either, Ethan, right? There's just no words. I just knew that my body was not as it should be. Like I was not born into the body that I should have been born into. It did not match me. And I saw a question earlier about if any of us identified as other, in other queer ways before our transition. And I did. I came out as a lesbian when I was 21 years old. And so, I had 20 plus years moving through the world and, being perceived as queer and at work, being out at work. So I had that out experience at work, but it's really interesting because I remember sitting and watching my dad shave. And so I had those kind of familial experiences, but I also remember the first time that I was sitting in a meeting room and people were just kind of him-hawing around. We were trying to land on something, and I realized they were waiting for me to say what to do. They were waiting for me to make the decision. And I'd been so used to being perceived as female around that corporate table that I was used to building consensus and making sure everybody was in agreement and bringing people along and together. And they just wanted me to make a decision. And once I said, well, I think we should do this, and everybody went, okay, we're doing that. And we're moving on. And I was like, what just happened here? Like, this was so counter to my entire life experience at work. And so it's taken me a lot longer to adapt to being perceived as male in the corporate space than it has in social spaces or in family spaces even, because come to find out, I didn't know it, but I was put in my most gendered slot and perceived gender role at work.
Right. I like that you had mentioned that to me before about being the man in the room and having people look to you for the decision in the office. And that's an incredible statement of where we are today as a society.
Mm-hmm.
I want to go to Victor because of the generational thing, because like we said, we didn't have, I didn't have a role model, right? And, growing up, even though I didn't know the word trans, I just didn't know, I knew I wasn't a lesbian, so I didn't use that term, but I was gay, but I didn't have those role models that are available now, and throughout social media. I don't even have Snapchat, so I'm so out of touch with things like that. I'm 54, But Victor, your point of view about role model, quickly, if you can, just give us your opinion on that from a younger person.
Sure thing. So I'm 26 and I was actually inspired by Alex drop right here in this panel. And this exact panel from last year, it was my first time at Out and Equal. And just a year ago, I was still closeted. So, and now here I am publicly out, like exact opposite. So it's just kind of amazing how much, like inspiration, comfort, and hope that just being out and visible can really inspire. Like I was just like sitting in the back, just like quietly watching it all. And I was screenshotting the panel, sending it to my friends and family, because I was like, oh my gosh, there's people who have like long respected careers. Like, and seriously, my friends and family could not believe it. Like they're from a more conservative background as well. So despite being from a younger generation, I was still in a community that like I was the first LGBT person that most of my friends knew. So it was really amazing to come to Out and Equal, and that was what I talked about in my opening speech. And I thought I would have to change industries because like I was working with finance clients and I thought I would have to go somewhere like tech to be accepted. So to see like someone like Alex who's been working like 20 plus years and still like be proud, be out here, that gave me hope that I didn't have to change who I was as a person, didn't have to change my career interests, and was able to pursue still staying in the world of banking. So I deeply thank all of you guys. And even when I got to the bank, I was still a bit shy to the teams that I didn't come out to in my initial interviews. They were like twice my age, like my parents' generation. And New York finance folks can be a bit intimidating. But I immediately reached out to Alex, who went through it all, and Alex really taught me how to normalize transition, how to really like connect to other people and help them see it from your perspective and really relate. So within a few short weeks, then that older generation team was able to get my pronouns, my gender correctly. And both Alex and my manager really encouraged me to assert myself. So that same level of assertiveness, confidence that was really pushed into me, carried over into my job, and their support just made me a stronger professional and a stronger person. So I deeply, deeply was supported and impacted by Alex, the bank, and everyone here.
Right, and it's just an example of the bank's culture. This is not, to give someone a hard time is not acceptable at our bank. And that's something that has to come from us as well as our coworkers and our allies, that you need to be comfortable and you need to be yourself. And once you are, the sky's the limit. You can just soar so high. Victor and I was talking earlier about the responsibility of being out and being on the stage and being in the spotlight, and then taking on that role of being an advocate and supporting others who are coming up. So that leads me to my next question. So to me, visibility is everything. When I first heard the term stealth, and stealth is choosing not to share your that you're trans with your your workplace or your friends or social situations. I said to myself, there's no way I could ever be stealth. I mean, I'm a fighter, I'm an advocate, and most of all, I have a really big mouth. So there's no way I'm going to, be stealth in this world. So my question to the panel is that, have you ever thought about being stealth, or have you ever was stealth? Did you ever use that? Did you ever just be stealth? Ethan, want to take that?
Yeah, I can definitely take that. It's so funny because just recently, like as of last year, I actually heard the term stealth, and I never knew that there was a term for it. Honestly, with me, I'm a person that like I said, I've been with Microsoft almost 10 years. The people that are around me know. So for me, my business is my business. I never looked at it like I'm hiding who I am, Because when I feel the need to say or speak up about the fact that I'm a Black man of the trans experience, I will. So, I mean, for a lot of people, they would probably say I was stealth because being with the company, being promoted to various positions, now being in the federal space, and it literally, for my coworkers in the federal space, some of them just found out that I was trans because in our space, we were talking about the whole George Floyd thing, and people were tiptoeing around it earlier this year. And I literally used that time to educate people about me transitioning and how when I transitioned, my friends that were actually gay guys at the time was like, you sure you want to do this? It's actually way more safer if you stay on the side you're on, because if you transition to a Black man in America, you're a walking target. That was the conversation. So for me, it wasn't that I was being stealth. It was that, I learned that my business is my business. When I'm ready to inform you about my business, I will, one. And two, I speak up. So when I feel the need to speak up for people who are afraid to speak up, I'll speak up. And what you think of me is not my business anyway. Opinions are the cheapest commodities. Try to pay your bills with them. But it took for me having conversation with you folks, having conversation, especially being, the worldwide policy co-director of Glean, to see more than anything that, yeah, I speak up when I need to speak up, but you know what? I need to be more visible, because if I'm at a table, it's not about sitting at the table, it's about having a voice. And if that means me saying, hey, let me raise my hand, this is what intersectionality looks like, a Black man of the trans experience, I need to be visible for people who aren't visible. And I need to make sure that people know that there is a trans person at the table. So initially, never looked at it like stealth, ever. I looked at it like, it's my business. It's not your business. But when I need to, I'll definitely let you know. And more so than anything, like I said, it's very important now more than anything, because just having this conversation about knowing a person that's a trans man in our companies is actually kind of scary, because when we think about it, we really don't. So how are we supposed to know who are trans men in our company if everybody was like an Ethan and said, it's not your business, So,
Excellent answer. I really like that. Chris, you want to, I know that you're an advocate and you volunteer and.
Yeah, so I do a lot of volunteer work and I choose to be visible. I think early on in my transition, I was kind of hoping that I would start hormones and have this miraculous change and wake up, this, 40-year-old middle-aged man overnight. It hasn't happened that quickly for me. So I don't know that I don't necessarily have a problem with that, because I also feel like the responsibility of just being visible is less about me and is just more about getting the message out and like interacting with other people who maybe haven't ever met a transgender person before. Like when I came out at work, I had multiple coworkers come up to me and say, all right, like I'm really willing to support you in this, but you're the first trans person I met. So like, please be forgiving of me if, I don't say or do the right things. And I think that it's really more about education for me than about being stealth. Because at the end of the day, like you choose, like trans is not my only identity. I have other aspects of my life that I don't have to continuously come out on a daily basis to people, because that does actually get really exhausting. But just being, like everybody's saying, just being out there and being visible is more important to me than going stealth at this point. So
Yeah, I like that you are definitely more than your identity, and and it's the intersectionality of everything, right? Victor, I know that you are been out to your family and your friends. Has the word stealth ever come into your vocabulary or into your mind?
Yeah, I definitely thought about it. And funny enough, throughout my career, I was always known to be very young as a professional and for my roles. So when I came out and meet new people, a lot of times they're so distracted by my age that they don't really pay attention to any other of my features. So if I wanted to, I could have continued being stealth professionally. But personally and professionally in my previous firm, I really wanted to go stealth just to see what it would be like to just experience something that I yearned for my whole life. But then I realized that I just kept getting scared of being outed by like a friend of a friend or like an old coworker, like if something would slip up. And then I just realized that that fear wasn't worth it. And I got to experience stealth for a little bit, but then I realized the responsibility that Alex was alluding to earlier of if I am supported and if I made it as a trans man, I really need to use that to be visible. Oops, sorry. I really need that to be visible and hope to encourage other trans guys to be more vocal as well. And I realized like for my peers, for my friends, if they treat me differently for being trans, that's much more a reflection on them than myself. So I stopped being scared of being outed, and now I'm very open about being a transgender male. And I hope to be a role model for many others. Thank you guys. Oh, sorry, one more point. Actually, so in my personal life, most of the people I met after transition did not realize I was trans at all. So now I'm coming out as trans to them slowly to see their reaction. And they've been nothing but supportive. So it just kind of makes you feel like, wow, I've been scared for no reason and I totally should have done this earlier.
Make some great points as I go to Sam. Victor, you said, that stealth that you yearn for, that position that you always wanted, that it's, to be able to pass, that passing. And for myself, looking at, these message boards and the groups on Facebook, all I see is these young people saying, do I pass? Do I pass? Do I pass? They're posting pictures. It's all about this passing. And I don't get it. And I guess because I'm an old, but what's your thoughts on this, Sam? And
Yeah, so it's been an interesting journey, right? I'm just had my fourth T anniversary, right? My from when I started HRT, hormone replacement therapy. And when you first start on your journey, there's so much of it that is for me was a journey of getting to feel comfortable in my own body and to be able to recognize the person that looked back at me from the mirror. And so as the journey progressed, I got more and more comfortable with that, but my relationship with others started to change. And so, to put a point on it, I mean, Alex knows me. I'm very much with Alex in this. I've never been stealth. I've never thought of going stealth. I've never wanted to go stealth. What I'm finding is that there are ways that stealth is foisted upon us, right? Because the reason that I'm not stealth is because I want to be visible. Well, visibility for me is born of privilege. And I know we have a question about that we'll get to later. But what visibility is also meant is depending on where I am, is how I'm perceived. So if I'm an out and equal, then I'm either assumed to be a gay man or a trans man for the most part, right? When I'm in queer spaces, people look at me and they make an assumption. A lot of times I'm assumed to be a gay man. When I'm at work, right, or when I'm not in a predominantly queer space, people look at me and they assume I'm a cis het normative. And so I feel like I'm in the position of frequently having to come out, and being assumed pisses me off in a way, like not in a bad way, but I get that kind of like, and so, there was some conversation in the chat earlier about, people, not having to come out as trans, but really struggling to have their queer identity recognized and validated. And so, it's almost that mishmash now of being an out and equal and trying to find a way to say like, yes, I'm trans, and being visible in that, and being at work, and, you know, yes, I'm trans and I'm queer, and trying to navigate the perceptions, right? We are trained to see things and make assumptions about people. So I did this great experiment. I was at an event. It was a queer event. It was a whole weekend event, and there were about 200 people involved. And I went in, and I knew, I don't know, a handful of folks, and they knew my story. I didn't come out as trans. Like, I went the whole weekend. Like, we spent all day Friday together, all day Saturday together, and I didn't say a word. And we get to the big night event Saturday night, and it's fancy. Like, we're in DC. It's fancy tables. It's fancy. And Caleb, you know where I'm going with this. Caleb's on our meeting today, and I stood up at the mic and told this group of people that I was trans. So they had assumed I was this gay man all weekend, and it was really affirming. Like, it was super affirming for me, and I wasn't doing it to play a trick on anybody. It was like a social experiment for me. And then I stood up and told them, and like, you could have seen the heads like pop off of these people sitting around the table because they had no idea. And it was such an eye-opening experience for everyone, because this was a queer space, and that they had assumed, just because of their queer identity, that I was queer and cis, or a gay cis man, and not a trans man. And I don't even think they had, then understood like whether I was queer identified or not. They were just mind blown. But it was such a lesson for me to not make assumptions about people. And so I think I've got a really different relationship with stealth, which is, it's not so much about stealth. I mean, I think that, people from a variety of reasons and choices, that may be the choice that is best for them, from a safety perspective, from a mental health perspective, I don't want anyone to feel judged about your decision about whether you disclose or not, and whether you're visible or not. That's not my message. I think everyone needs to be comfortable and safe in their experience and fulfilled in their experience. But that for me, it's more about visibility, and to still feel invisible in spaces is a still part of the journey. And that's one of the things that I love about Out and Equal, and I love these conversations, is because people really lean in. And I think we have an opportunity for us all to like check ourselves and say, wow, we are all still constantly making assumptions based on how someone looks or dresses or acts or moves through the world. And wow, that's really not fair. We need to be moved through the world with an open mind and a question mark of letting people share with us who they are. So yeah, those are my thoughts on stealth.
Yeah, that's such a great point about, having those assumptions and your own space, where you are in your own space. And I'm reading the comments here that a lot of people are jumping on that, and I think that's great. And I'm glad we're having this conversation, because we don't often get the chance to have this conversation in this type of setting, right? Okay, so I have two more questions, and then, around 5 o'clock, because this goes on to 5:30, I want to open it up at 5 o'clock to audience discussion and questions, and that's why we have this type of meeting. So let's get through these two questions, and then we'll start formulating your questions and how you want to address, if you want to come on the video or whatever. Start thinking about that. So I'm going to mix it up. I'm going to go to Victor, and I'm going to ask Victor, why do you think there are so few vocal or visible trans men in the business world?
I think there's still fears around being openly out transgender professional. Like, I remember just 1 month after my social transition in my previous firm, I was assigned to a project in the same city where the bathroom bill legislation happened. And at that moment, I was 1 month in, just starting to be confident in my more masculine appearance. And I immediately was like, thinking, should I run back into the closet? I had no idea how to present when I was going to start my project there, and I didn't want to turn it down. I was still a junior professional. So I was still deeply scared, right after feeling so empowered, unfortunately. But I ended up presenting the way that I wanted, which was masculinely, and luckily in that in that city with my client, they were very supportive. They were very vocal. I think because they were in the same space of all of that politics, that the client that I was working with made it a point to be like very supportive openly. And that was before I even joined their team. So I had a good experience, luckily, but I could only imagine the same thoughts that many of my coworkers and peers must have felt. So I think when people see more like open support from companies themselves and just more visible out and vocal trans guys in general, that there will be more transgender masculine folks who would be willing to be out in the business world. And I think especially like at Bank of America with how vocal and how many resources they provide to transition. And if more companies follow suit, that will definitely be the future.
Excellent. Chris, you have an opinion on this?
Yes, for sure. And I really like what Victor said as well. I just believe so strongly that trans men are definitely out there in the world, and we're potentially being held back by just fear, like this just tremendous level of fear of being visible and speaking out. Was something in my personal journey. I remember when I first came out to my manager, it was right after a mid-year review, and I literally like broke down sobbing because like putting something out there that was so personal to this other person who's going to take this information and like they don't know, you know, like all these feelings that I've had internally, like back and forth about like, should I come out? Should I not come out? You know, it took me 36 years to come out. And like, once I finally did, it was the best decision I had ever made. But before that, you know, like not really having mentors at work, not really having any colleagues that knew anything about transgender, you know, other than like some negative things that you hear on the news, which doesn't even cover like a portion of the story. I think it just takes a lot of overcoming your own, you know, like personal fear and just really stepping forward and being like, you know what, like this may not be a conventional journey, it may not be your journey, but it's mine and I'm gonna own it. So I don't know what more to say, but I definitely think that like just having a virtual format like Out and Equal and being able to network with other people who are going through a really similar change in their lives is very empowering. So thank you all for being here.
I see you, Chris, and I'm giving you hugs, Chris.
Virtual hugs. All right.
Ethan, want to chime in?
I honestly feel like just thinking about my experience and thinking about who I am as far as intersectionality, right? So at first sight, I am a Black man with tattoos. You can't see my tattoos, but I have a whole hell of a lot of them, right? And I think we don't see a lot of trans men because there's probably other things with intersectionality going on as well. So for instance, I'm a Black man of the trans experience. That's double discrimination. So if I wasn't like literally courageous and happy with who I am, I have so many, you know, darts at me right now. I would much rather just go ahead and be the Black man, honestly. Because when you think about a Black man of the trans experience, well, shit, like how many more do I need to check? That's one. So I think so for most trans men, it's probably like, you know what? You have to sit back and really think, like, is this something I really want to get myself into? Sometimes you just want to be left alone. Yeah. I want to be treated like a human. Treat me like a human. I don't care if it's because I'm trans. I don't care if it's because I'm Black. I just want to be treated like a human. So I think most of the times that's probably why so many trans men don't want to be visible, because one, you don't know what's going on in their home lives. Let's be honest, like I'll be the first to tell you, my dad wasn't having it. He passed 3 years ago, but he was not having it. I was the oldest. He wanted to fight me. He wanted to go toe to toe. Never disrespected him. He just wanted to go toe to toe because in his mind, he couldn't understand why I would do something like that. So I honestly think it's the bigger picture. Yeah. It goes back to us talking about why people go stealth and why people don't. It's a much bigger, it could be way more complicated. And honestly, looking at me, that's a form of privilege too, because you would only know I was trans unless I told you. If I didn't tell you, you would never know. Like even for instance, last year I was featured on the Microsoft Pride campaign, and so many of my coworkers and everything automatically assumed I had a gay brother or a gay sister. They couldn't even, they had no idea at all. It took for this year's Pride campaign that just launched on October the 1st, where I literally said, being a Black man with trans experience, I faced double discrimination, where it was like a uproar, but it was a good uproar where everybody was like, holy cow, I had no idea. I just thought that you really, you're so positive. I thought that maybe, it was a family member that, you were allying with, and they never knew. So I think it's much easier sometimes from that standpoint, because you never know what else is going on. Like we could talk about George Floyd. We could talk about everything else happened. A lot of people didn't understand what happened the same week as George Floyd. They only knew George Floyd got gunned down, had no idea that a Black trans man got gunned down the same week. And that's a conversation I had to have and communicate with inside of Microsoft. Like, hey, do you know about Tony McDade? And
No.
nobody knew about Tony McDade. But guess what?
They do now, right?
I'm Tony McDade, because it's one of those things where I think sometimes if you don't have the support or you don't have the courage to do certain things, that you decide to pick the lesser. And for trans men, it's kind of easier to go stealth than it is to say, hey, I'm a trans man, because sometimes with that, depending on the company you work for, now you want to get into the D&I. Okay, well, let me hire this person because they can check this box. No, I want you to hire me because I can do the job and you think I'm the perfect one for the job, not because I meet your standards,
That's excellent. Excellent. So glad you said his name. So glad you did. It has to be said. We have to say it. Okay, Sam, so I want you to answer the original question, but I also want, because you talk about this so well, I want you to talk about your privilege. All right. So if you can give us a little bit about the vocal and visible, and clearly you're a person who is, but I want you to then go into the privilege section.
Yeah, so I mean, I think we covered a little bit, at the outset of my experience, that I don't have any leaders who identify as trans men or transmasculine at Dell. Alex is the first business person that I met that identified just as strongly with their business goals as much as we ended up talking about our personal journey. There was always a connection around business goals there. So Alex, you're the first person who kind of put that on my roadmap, as we can have this conversation around a business and not just in the lens of D&I. So Ethan, thanks for bringing that point up. Right, it's important, and my hope is that, in the words of John Lewis of Making Good Trouble, that we continue to make some good trouble, and that visibility will shine a light on the path for those ahead of us and for those behind us, right? That's we think about trailblazing, and trailblazing is, you think about a trailblazer and they've got their headlamp on and their heads down and they're like on the trail, and they're blazing ahead, but we can't forget to put the floodlight behind us and light that path for everybody coming behind. And some of the really powerful conversations at last year's Out and Equal are about, leaving the rope down behind you and putting the hand out for those who come along behind and bringing them along with you. So I think that if I don't have that person in my life, then I hope that these conversations create those people, create those experiences for others, and that we will continue to see more trans men come out, whether they're already executives in companies or whether that, whether we're making our way up through the ranks to hold those spots and be those examples that we didn't have. So I seeing some of the message pop up. So it's you're right. Like it's easier to climb when somebody has to have the headlamp, but I'll stand by my statement. I feel like we have to have lights in both directions. Now, as far as privilege is concerned, one of the really shocking things about my transition from my personal experience was waking up a white privileged male. And it pissed me off and it made me sad and it made me reckon with my years and years of previous experience and feeling like I had kind of been gaslighting myself a little bit about the fact that I didn't feel particularly marginalized. I didn't feel particularly discriminated against as a queer identified perceived female in the world. And then I come into these spaces now and it just sucks. And I felt like I would walk into a room and work, and because I'm in technology, I had single-handedly de-diversified a room because I'd taken the one female perceived person out of that room and replaced it with my trans male self. And now there were no women around the table, and I felt lousy. And I walk down the street now, and the first time I was in my own neighborhood, and I'm walking down the street, and I'm on my way to the mailbox, and it's the middle of the day, and I pass this woman, and I nod and smile at her, and I saw this look over her face, like it was just this calculation of who is this dude, and why is he looking at me, and why, and do I need to be afraid? And I came home and sobbed because I thought I have to now be concerned that people are afraid of me. Like, what have we done in this society that in the broad daylight, a woman can't walk down the sidewalk and not have to analyze if her life is in danger because this dude's just walking down the sidewalk to get his mail? And I've had to learn, I've had to modify my behavior and consider my privilege so that I don't walk into those spaces and project my maleness in such a way to create unsafe space for other people now. And Ethan, I'm so glad that you have been vocal today about your experience as a Black trans man. I am so thankful for Alex for pulling you into this conversation so that we have your voice at this table. And yeah, you can't, the thing about privilege is you can't deny it. You can't say, no thanks for me, none for me, thanks. I'll just go off along and not accept it. You can't. And so you have to acknowledge it and reckon with it. And golly, I hope that I use my privilege for good. I really, really do.
I know you do. I know you do, definitely.
Alex, if I could say one thing to say.
Sure.
Sam, you are awesome. And I want to say that, I say that to say, you are the T in diversity. And I don't want you to ever forget that. So you stated how you were at the table at one point in time, you were the only female perceived person at the table. Well, guess what? Now you are a trans man at the table. You are the T in diversity. Don't ever forget that.
Okay, so such powerful conversations we've had. I did promise that I did want to open this up at 5 o'clock to the group. I do see a hand up, I think. Did someone put a hand up? Erin, you still around? Are you still on, Erin?
I'm here, sorry.
Do you see anyone who wants to talk, to take the video? No? Does anyone have comments? Everyone's shy.
I'm pretty full. I think if someone unmutes themselves, they'll automatically be displayed. But I don't see I'm looking for hands up. I don't see that.
This is Christine. I don't have a hand to raise my attention, but I've been anxious to say hi to Alex and Sam and Lim. One of the problems with this virtual is I can't be there to harass you in person. So, you guys are doing good. And Sam, you made a comment that I did want to echo, which is the awareness of privilege. Privilege is a universal condition on both sides of the street. I gained that insight when I transitioned from male to female. I saw it from that side. You see it from going from female to male. And that awareness is something that we all share together. So that's all I had.
Thank you. Thank you. Was anyone else out there? I know that one of my coworkers are out in the audience. Sean, did you want to say anything? Are you out there still?
Sure. Hi, I met a few of you last year, and just wanted to say how grateful I am to see you again, albeit in this virtual space. But last year, I shared my coming out story with you all first before I had shared it with many others. And I've spent the last 11 months, well, 12 months, but last 11 months in particular, really coming into my own. And I do now fully identify as a trans man. And it's been a great year. It's been a very public year for me as far as my work is concerned. I'm the chair of our Pride ERG and have done a lot of work around our workplace transition and gender identity support to include project management of a toolkit, and have done a lot of work with our I&D team, and even spoken to outside organizations about how to in your own corporate space. So very glad to see this as a continuing tradition, and I hope to see this happen at every Out and Equal going forward. So really just wanted to say thank you, and for helping me as I was struggling with what my own journey was going to look like in these months since our last meeting.
Excellent. Good to hear. Colin?
Yeah, hi everyone. It's really great to see you all again. So I went to Out and Equal conference last year. It was right after I had come out at work. I had come out at work like mid-September, so it was really fresh. I was still really nervous, but I was so inspired by Out and Equal last year and seeing other transmasculine people just owning their identities and being successful, and I was inspired to go back home and do some work. So I got more involved with my ERG, and opportunities there and opportunities in my professional engineering career have really just bursted open for me. And I never thought that coming out as transgender would be such a positive experience for my career. Not only was it fine, but it ended up being really positive. So I just really appreciate this space and wanted to say hello. I miss seeing all of you in person, but happy to have this space this year. So thank you.
That's great. Tabitha, I think, wanted to say something. Was that what I saw? Take yourself off mute. Yep. Okay, go ahead.
So I just wanted to say that this has been awesome to hear you talk about your journeys, because I came out last year as a trans woman, and I just feel like hearing it from the other side, how the transition going the other way has been, is really helping me to get more perspective of what is happening to me, and all the things that all the things I tried to be before I came out, and then how things are different now is just really interesting.
Well, thank you, and thank you for coming. And for all those of you who like this content, once again, make sure that you fill out your survey, and so we can come back next year. I did see Liam, I think it was, who wanted to say something.
Yeah, hi everyone. I really do appreciate this. I've been an out trans man. I came out at work 6 years ago. In the comments, you guys can follow my story there. I've put a couple comments out there, and I'm happy to, if people have questions and want to reach out about transitioning in the workplace, I'm also happy to answer questions. I had a question for Ethan. I am a half
an adult conversation.
I am a half Black, disabled trans man, and with George Floyd, with COVID, with everything else that has come out this year, Supreme Court, political opinions, all of the things, when we really hit that intersectionality, how are you handling intersectionality and the kind of the fact that we're being hit from multiple perspectives right now. Kind of if you are Black and trans, if you are disabled and trans, how are you handling that situation, and how can we best handle that situation and stay sane right now?
Well, that's an awesome question, Liam. I get that question a lot because outside of Microsoft, I'm an executive and transformational coach. I do motivational speaking. And I say the same thing every time. When you are completely at peace with who you are, it does not matter what's going on around you. For me, when it comes to certain things, especially, COVID and George Floyd, and when you have all of that stuff, it did not change me. It just changed how I react to certain things. And how I stay sane is that I get up every morning, I literally meditate for 15 minutes. And before I get on any calls, I make sure that I take time to myself, and I make sure that I educate people as well, because I think that's one of the most difficult things with 2020 is making sure that we have the brave dialogue and we educate people. And ironically, probably sounds corny, but I still do vision boards. So January this year, I did my vision board. Of course, never thinking that this year would be like it has been. And I thought it was very strange that on my vision board, I had 4 pictures and a lot of words. And in the middle of my vision board, it says bigger conversations, broader thinking, and bolder decisions. And I did not know why that had to be in the middle of my more and more, and it's October now, I realized that that's what 2020 has been about. Bigger conversations, broader thinking, and bolder decisions. So the great part about the intersectionality is that we can see both sides, right? We can see both sides to each coin. We can Black man of the trans experience, and then I'm a Black man of the trans experience that is heterosexual. So of course, now people have those kind of questions. What do you mean? Now they don't understand it's a difference between sexual orientation and gender, and you get into all of that stuff. But I only say that to say, regardless of what's going on, Liam, remain who you are. Things may shift around you, but you don't change. The only thing you do is adjust to what's going on. Liam stays the same. And whoever doesn't like it, that's literally their business. And that's how I've been able to get through this year with having my 17-year-old cousin who committed suicide in August, my my half siblings, their mother passed last month, and 3 years ago, our dad passed, and I'm the oldest, right? So I have so many things hitting me in so many ways on top of being a Black man of the trans experience. The only way I'm sitting here and I'm able to have this conversation with you folks is because I've remained Ethan. I've gotten to the point where I'm so comfortable in my soul that no matter what goes on, the only thing I do is adjust to the expectations, but I'm still Ethan. And that's the advice I would give you.
Excellent. Excellent. Mara, I see Mara, can take yourself off mute.
Yeah, hi. Sorry, I was trying to speak, but I couldn't find the raise your hand thingy until someone pointed out in the chat. But hi, I'm Mara. I'm from Mexico. I'm a trans woman. I work at Dell, and I actually know Sam. He's pretty cool. And I had a question that I think maybe kind of, not stupid, but I think it's probably been talked about a lot, but I don't really have many trans people I can talk about this with. So I wanted to hear your perspective from it, especially being as you have, as we have noticed, I think with transmasculinity, it's a little bit underrepresented. So how do you feel about like burnout of trying to maybe sometimes represent or being expected to represent the whole like a monolithic experience on transmasculinity or trans experience in general?
Yeah,
I don't know if I made myself
no,
clear,
it's a great question. And I actually, we do have somebody at the bank who's trans male who who brought this up at one of our meetings, talking about, I don't want to be the token in the organization. I'm tired of being the token. I want to be successful. I want my career to be successful, and I don't want to be a token. And I can understand how that can happen. And what I'm trying to figure out for myself is, how do I do what I love? This is what I love. I love getting people together to answer questions and to do the hard work. I love that. But I also love my job, my day job, and I want to be successful there. And for me, I figured out that the more successful I am at my day job, that affords me more opportunity to do the hard work, to donate the monies to the causes that need to do, to be able to fly to see, to go to HRC in Texas because I want to support my friend. You know, I can do those things when I'm successful. And so it took me a long time to get to that point, right? It took me, actually, it was this year that I said, you know what? I'm taking what's mine, and I deserve this promotion that I'm in the running for. I'm taking what's mine, but I'm also doing what I need to do for my heart. I think everyone's got to find that balance. And I wish I had that confidence that Ethan has on finding that solid middle. And I don't have that yet, but I know what I want. I want to have the success, and I want to be able to do good things. And I know it's possible. I know it is. The coworker, he made a point. He said, I don't want to be the token. I can't be the token anymore. I just want to be successful. And everyone has their choice. And if he decides to step back, that's his choice. And I respect it 110%. To me, that's not me, because I've always been loud. And I grew up in the 80s. I was laid on the streets of New York City, would act up for my brothers who were dying. So for me, it's a different journey. So everyone has to have that own internal discussion. Anyone else want to chime in on that? I see Grant. Hopefully they answered your question, Mara. Hopefully. Grant?
Hey, yeah, I'm Grant from Apple. I use he, him pronouns. I want to say first, thank you guys for the conversation. I was just like, it was so amazing, and I was really touched by your stories. My brother is he's 19 years old, and he came out as trans about a year ago, and it's so amazing to just see so many successful, like kind, wonderful people kind of navigating their careers. And kind of I just really wish he could be here to kind of see so many role models, because it's just it's really amazing to see. My question for you guys is this thing I was really curious about is he just started college, and he was really devastated because he came out in high school, which is super early from most people I know who are trans, and all his friends and everybody knew him when he was presenting as female and then transitioned to male. So he kind of came in and everyone knew. And in college, he was so excited to start kind of fresh, and they messed it all up. He got put in the girls section of the dorm. You know, like everything was just like they got the name wrong and put the old dead name on somehow. I don't know how they even found it, and all that kind of thing. And it was so interesting to see. A lot of you guys are kind of open about being trans to your coworkers and all of those different things. So I was wondering if you could give him any advice or perspective from your own experience on kind of being okay with people knowing you're trans versus trying to pass with stealth. I'd be really interested to hear. And thank you again for all sharing. I really it was really kind of emotional hearing all the different stories. It was awesome to hear.
Thank you. Anyone, any advice? That's hard. That's, you know, I would be so furious.
Yeah, that's really hard. That's such a violation of trust, right? Because disclosing should be choice. And I imagine he was really excited to have that experience. In no small part because of the affirmation of just being able to be himself and live his truth. I don't there's no way to put Pandora's box back together again. but I think being, Alex and I are old farts. Sorry, I'm putting you in that box with me. I think the first thing that comes to mind, Grant, is he'll have this opportunity again. Like, this sucks, and I'm sorry it happened. I'm so sorry. And he should be able to mourn and grieve the loss of the experience that he wanted. And hopefully also there's some really wonderful insight that comes from it. And I don't know what that will be, because I don't want to minimize the grief, because it's definitely a grief process. But I think he'll have that opportunity more than just this year. And maybe he helps fix a system that so it doesn't happen to someone else again down the road. I don't know. That's not on him. That's not his responsibility. I don't know what it will be. But I think if I talked to him, I would say, oh golly, that sucks so bad. And I think you'll have the opportunity to have this experience at some other point, and let's figure out some spaces where you get to go and just be you and be comfortable. Maybe not everybody knows in those spaces, right? I think there are other places to go. So, but golly, just more than anything, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And by all means, feel free to pass along my contact information. I know several folks on here are willing to put up their hands if he wants people to talk to that are outside of sphere. Like, sometimes it's just nice to have somebody to go talk to that's not your family or your friends or anybody, if he needs resources. It sounds like he has a really super supportive brother with you. So kudos for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Caleb, did I pronounce it right? Are you there?
You did pronounce it right. Thank you, Alex. First of all, I want to say thank you to everybody that presented, because I think everybody did an awesome job. There's a lot of conversation and a lot of topics that were brought up that are needed to hear. And I just wanted to reiterate the importance of visibility and being that ally for those, that are coming along behind us that may not have that courage. And just with my story, in my little bitty world, I was able to advocate for 6 different people within my organization that were, transitioning or, thinking about transitioning, and, just giving them those pathways that they need, and the guidance, that they were seeking. Role models, they're very few and far between. Not everybody's got them. I lost my parents before my transition. So to say that I would have that role model and support, I can't say for sure either way if they would have supported my transition. I do have a couple of people that work with me that are awesome. But just to have that one person that, puts their arm around you and says, hey, this is what it looks like, or this is how you should do this or whatever. Not saying that you don't want to be your authentic self, but at the same time, there's a certain path, and I think Sam touched on it when he said that he stepped into that realm of the security being gone. You see your neighbor and you speak, and all of a sudden you see that fear, and you're in a different light now. And you're in, that group that, poses fear upon women. So just knowing, where you need to be in that space, and how to keep this world a safer place, and making everybody feel safe and secure. So I just wanted to touch on that, and first of all, tell everybody thank you, and I appreciate you presenting today.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Kai Brown? Did I say that right? I'm bad with names.
Hi, yes, no, Kai is correct. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Sam, it's interesting to hear someone finally talk about the environment I work in. I've worked in mostly male environments, and it's up until recently when I'm mostly female, and now I've transitioned back into a tech position, which again is mostly male, and I'm transitioning to male. They're not fully aware of that yet. It's still a process, but it's interesting to hear somebody else. I have that same kind of feeling of I changed, right? I'm no longer the female at the table. So it's very different. And it's just exciting to hear somebody else has that same kind of experience and feeling, and that I'm not kind of, I always wondered if I was the only one who experienced that, but there is a difference. And I've worked in both environments where mostly male. I served in the military where I was primarily one female out of 250 men. And it was funny because in the military, it was easy for me because I'd go in and I'd say, treat me as anybody else. When I put this uniform on, I'm a soldier. I'm not female or male. I'm here to do a job. And that job is what I do. And so I was raised with brothers and I always felt more comfortable around men. And so it's kind of interesting. I grew up in an environment where it was unsafe or it wasn't even thought of that you could transition. And so here I am at 54 years old starting a transition. So it's the BRGs are a big part of why I did that, because I met people and started learning the language and finally am able to be myself for the first time in my entire life. So thank you guys for showing me that it is possible. And I just appreciate the conversation today.
Well, thank you and congratulations.
Congratulations.
I think we have one more room for one more question. Time for one more. Anybody want to jump in? No, I can go. Robin. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Robin. I use he, him. This isn't going to end up being a question, but this is mostly just a thank you to all of you who have done this work, because I've been able to transition. I came out and started transitioning when I was in college about, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, something like that. I just graduated college in 2019, and this is my first Out and Equal conference, and just finished my first year in the professional world. And really what y'all have done is provided me with a very smooth transition to go from being in college to transitioning to being in the workforce. And my biggest problems are not around my queer issues or my trans issues, but around just being 22 and in a new city. So I just want to say thank you. I would not have been able to do that with the work that y'all have done before me.
Well, thank you. And that's why we do this and why we put ourselves out here. And it's just incredible. Last year's experience, when we had the closed door experience, and the earlier session was just overwhelming to me. And right afterwards, I told them, we have to do this again. We have to do this again. This is so important. I think that we are helping people, and hopefully we're helping change happen. I think that is our time, right? My closing thoughts, I just want to say thank you to you all. You can find my contact information in my bio. Please feel free to reach out. I've made some great friends from Out and Equal, and they'll be my lifetime friends, and I would love to get to know some more people. So if you want to reach out, feel free. And anyone else want to say closing thoughts? I'll leave it up to my panel to say goodbye.
I just would like to say thank you and have a great day on purpose.
Excellent. All righty.
I also really wanted to say thank you for everybody who joined. And thanks to Victor, Ethan, Alex, and Sam, for sure. You all are just really wonderful, and I'm just honored to be on this panel today with y'all. So thank you for being here.
Okay, so I'm told that they'll kick us out right at that time. So if you have ideas or if you want to be on a future panel, drop me a line. That would be great as well.
Fantastic workshop, as always, Alex.
Thank you.
If y'all have ideas for topics of workshops you want to see offered next year, send those along too. Or if you have questions about how to have your own workshop and you haven't done it before and you want to talk to somebody about what that would mean, raise your hand. Awesome sauce.
Ready.
This is great, y'all.
Have a wonderful afternoon, everyone.
All right.
I'm gonna go turn on my air conditioner because it's 95 degrees in my office right now.
Bye, everyone.
It's your own little tea furnace.
Yes, burning up. Thank you.
Hey, Sloan.
I'm gonna send you some ice packs, Alex.
Yeah.